Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at a display that you might have seen on my desk in another video the other day. This is the Dell S2718D. It is a 27-inch ultra-thin monitor, as you can see, and it has an added feature in that the base here is also a USB Type-C hub. So right now I've got my little MacBook here connected with a single cable, and that is delivering video to the display. It is charging the MacBook here, and it's also got a couple of other ports here on the back, a few USB ports that I can use as well. So we're going to take a look and see how all of this works here in just a second. But I do want to mention, in the interest of full disclosure, that this came in free of charge through the Amazon Vine program. However, all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one is reviewing this content before it is posted. So let's start off with the panel itself. This is a 2560 by 1440 display, so it's not 4K. There are more higher resolution displays out there. It runs at 60 Hertz, so it may not be ideal for gamers either, but it looks pretty nice here. As you can see, the viewing angles are really decent on it. This is an IPS display, and what's nice is that I'm not seeing much of any backlight bleed on it, so it really has a pretty high quality look to it. Dell actually sources some really good panels for their displays, and it looks like this is one of those. The color on it is very nice, 99% of the sRGB gamut. They have an HDR mode that is unique to Dell. It's not a standard HDR mode, but if you are plugged in via HDMI and not in through the USB Type-C cable like I'm in right now, you can switch it into that high dynamic range mode. It does add a little more contrast and a little more saturation to the color, but it's not standards compliant with all the other HDR modes that are out there. So if you're trying to plug in a TV box or something and looking to play HDR content from Netflix, for example, it may not recognize this as an HDR display, but you can put it into that mode, which of course will add some image processing to it. I actually prefer it in its standard mode here, which is what I have. It's not too oversaturated. It looks pretty good there. 400 nits of brightness, so it's a little less bright perhaps than my iMac is, but it is brighter than many of the displays we get here on the channel. A 1000:1 contrast ratio. The response rate is 6 milliseconds in its fast mode, which is putting in less image processing. If you have some things on like the HDR mode and a few other things, it will be about 8 milliseconds in its response rate. Gamers want something faster, both in its refresh rate, which is again 60 Hertz on this one, as well as response rate. So this may not be a gamer's monitor, probably more for a professional looking for something attractive that also has decent display quality. This is not cheap, speaking of professionals. So you're looking at about $700 for this one. So I hope you don't tune out the video right now, because there's more to talk about with this display. But it's not cheap, and you can get 4K displays for less than what this one costs, but it does look pretty nice. Now this is not VESA compatible because all the guts of the display are in the base here. So it actually has some weight to it. It's pretty heavy. But as you can see, the display does bounce around a little bit. I am using cheap furniture here. I have an IKEA desk, so any kind of movement I do on this desk will translate to the monitor itself. But it seems to hold itself together pretty well, but shaking my desk here will shake the monitor slightly. It does not have an up or down adjustment, but you do have a good amount of range here on the angle, and you can also adjust the tilt angle here as well. So you can move it side to side like so, or up and down. But remember, you cannot mount this to a wall or anything. You're going to be living with this stand forever. Now on the back side of the monitor, you've got a power input over here for getting everything powered up. You do have an HDMI input, so if your laptop does not have USB Type-C, or you have some compatibility issues, which I'll explain in a second, you can still plug it in like a traditional monitor would allow you to plug into, so you've got that. What's interesting is that the HDR mode only works with devices plugged in via HDMI. It does not work over the USB-C connection here. So if you are looking to use that HDR mode, which is a selling point here, you lose your single cable connection because you'll need to connect up via HDMI. Now on the USB Type-C connector here, you'll see that there's a 45W there sandwiched between two logos. That refers to the power output of this monitor. So 45 watts is enough to charge a little MacBook like this one. This is the 12-inch MacBook. It'll also work with this Yoga 720 from Lenovo. This is a 13-inch device. Also uses 45 watts of power, no problem. Single cable. We got video, data, and power there. However, when you go up to bigger laptops like this one, this is a 15-inch Dell XPS 15. This one needs more power than this monitor can provide. And when you connect up the connector here to its USB Type-C port over there, it's a little blurry, but there is one on this laptop, you will get data and display going to the monitor here, but there's no power coming back because the laptop wants more. Now, my larger MacBook Pro 15 will get some power from it, but not enough for what it needs, especially when it's under load. So you might see circumstances, especially with that 15-inch MacBook, where you might be draining your battery when you start doing heavy video processing or something like that, because the monitor simply cannot provide enough power to it. This is one of the issues with USB Type-C, is that not every computer and manufacturer implements it the same way. So you definitely need to check your device manual before you buy this thing for the specifications to see what its power requirements are. So I think the rule of thumb here is if you got a smaller laptop like this one, or the Lenovo Yoga 720 here, maybe one of the Dell new 12 or 13-inch models, those should work, but you definitely need to check first, because you may not be able to get this single cable solution here if your laptop requires more power. And I've also seen that other manufacturers don't always implement USB Type-C the same way, and sometimes things just don't work. So you really should do some research here before you spend a lot of money, which is what this costs for this single cable solution. The good news, though, is that these two USB 3.0 ports do perform at full speed. I did a disk speed test a little earlier with my Mac. It seems to be working at the speed I would expect out of the external SSD I had connected, so that's a good thing. You're going to get the full data rate in addition to that 1440p display going out, so that was good. You also have a speaker connector here, so if you want to connect up speakers when you dock the laptop to it, you can route your audio through the dock here and have your speakers work with it. Now, a lot of times people are buying these monitors and realizing suddenly they have no sound, so if you are not looking to use the speakers that might be connected to this monitor, there are no speakers inside of it, you can reroute your audio through Windows or Mac to have those sounds come out of your laptop again. But if you are not hearing anything when you plug your computer into this, it's because this has no speakers and you have no speakers connected. But again, just a simple change in your settings should get your audio back on track. Now, while the display here is very attractive, there are some things that I'm not too crazy about that they've done on the design side. One is how you control the monitor's settings here. So you've got 4 buttons here. They don't have any labels on them, but when you push a button here, you have to kind of line up the button with what you want to press. So for example, if I wanted to do some of the color settings here, I could go there, and then I've got to make sure I've got my buttons lined up here to get into the right mode as I adjust the color temperature on this thing. So there are some peculiarities to the control panel here. I'm often hitting the wrong button because if the display is not directly centered over these buttons, I'm really not sure which one is which without having to look back down again and try to get the right button pushed when I do it. I do want to mention the one thing on the color temperature that you can set on here. It actually has a pretty wide range of color temperature. When it's warmer, it still looks good, as it does when it's on the colder side of things. So you can really find a sweet spot here on the white balance to get the image the way you want it, and the preset modes actually are pretty good on it as well. So I think the quality of this panel is very good, and it better be for the price. Now, as I mentioned, this is not a gaming monitor, but games do look pretty nice on it, especially because you've got these really nice viewing angles on it due to the IPS display. The contrast ratio here, the black levels are really nice on this. The color looks great. Games actually look really nice on this. Animation that is really fast might have some blur given the 6 millisecond response rate when you have it in that fast mode, but for me as a casual gamer, it's actually looked pretty nice. Now, one of the things I've been testing here on the channel over the last couple of months is input lag. In other words, how long does it take for a button push on a game controller to actually register on screen? And I've developed a methodology that seems to be working fairly well for me, in that we take an Xbox One controller, I plug it in via USB directly to a Windows PC. I've got a great little app that I've been using called the Game Controller Tester, I believe. It's in the Windows App Store. I push a button on the game controller and we see how long it takes for that button to light up on screen. And what I do is record it with my phone in slow-mo mode, because the phone records at 240 frames per second. So we can actually do the math and see how long it takes by counting the frames for that input to get registered. So we've been doing a lot of this with game controllers, but I've also been doing it with displays like this one. So the best one I've got right now is a Samsung curved display. It's a 1080p display that runs at 144 hertz. It's designed for gaming, and as such, it actually does the best. So with a wired USB controller, an Xbox One controller to a Windows PC, that one comes in at a 44 millisecond delay. The Dell here, when you do not have that HDR mode enabled, comes in at 60 milliseconds of delay. With the HDR mode enabled, you're at 72 milliseconds. So you might start seeing things not feel right if you have the HDR mode enabled, but The response rate here isn't too bad, but you could do better, of course, with a gaming monitor. So the big question is, what are you paying for here? Well, you're paying for its looks. You're getting very thin bezels, almost non-existent bezels all the way around, and very thin dimensions. But the reason why they're able to do this is because everything is in the base to drive the display. So you can't hang it up on a wall or do anything else like that with it. But it does look nice. However, you can get other 1440p displays for a lot less money that look as nice as this one, and in some cases perform better, perhaps faster refresh rates and lower response rates for gaming and other activities that really need a very fast response on the display. In fact, you could probably go to a 4K display for less than this one costs. Now, I am seeing this for $550 to $600 in some places on Amazon, so you might be able to get it for less than $700, but generally it's a pretty big price to pay, even at $550 for what this display is from a performance standpoint. But for people that really want looks, you got it here. My biggest gripe, though, is the fact that it only outputs 45 watts of power over that USB Type-C connector. And that's a problem because I think people who are spending $700 on a display are probably going to have a pretty powerful laptop to plug into it. And if you are plugging in a 15-inch Dell XPS 15 or a MacBook Pro with that 15-inch display, those need more power than this thing can provide. And I think that's going to be a problem for a lot of people. So I would definitely check your laptop specifications first to make sure you have something that will benefit from that single cable connection. If not, and you're going to have to plug in a couple cables anyhow, take a look around and see what other displays are out there, because I think you'll get better performance for a lot less money. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporters Mark Bollinger, Brian Miller, Mr. Morse, and Cody Falk. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.